How many of you remember these mana rocks? Most of you have probably looked at these and just went, man, these look terrible. They come in tapped. Why would I run any of these over the myriad 2 mana rocks that come in untapped? And well, yeah, you would be right. These are not the best. But when it comes to building budget decks, I think these rocks are heavily underrated. While they are a bit weaker than the standard 2 mana rock, they aren't that much weaker. Let's start off by looking at the amount of untapped 2 mana rocks that are under $1. For each non-green mono and 2-color deck, these are the amount of generically playable mana rocks. And the non-green 3-color groups. And finally, nano-green. These are pretty good numbers. 9 to 18 mana rocks that don't come in untapped? That seems pretty good. But let's lower the budget a bit more. What about rocks that are under 50 cents? At least for mono and 2-color decks, this definitely isn't enough. And if you're building super budget, the numbers are even worse. I tend to run 12 to 14 ramp cards, depending on the mana cost of the deck or the commander. And for 1 and 2-color decks, even at the $1 limit, there aren't enough mana rocks for me to play. And of course, I could always run some 3 mana rocks, especially since some 3 mana rocks have some extremely useful bonus effects or abilities, like Decanter of Endless Water giving you no maximum hand size, Cursed Mirror being able to come in as a copy of a really powerful or useful creature, Sonic Screwdriver just being a really good multi-tool, or Network Terminal being able to double up as a source of card draw in addition to ramp. But what if I'm running a 4-mana commander that I really want to get out on turn 3? No matter how good any of the 3-mana rocks I'm running are, they can't help me get my commander out early. In this context, you would want to cram as much 2-mana ramp as you can, as playing ramp on turn 2 will allow you to have the mana required to cast your commander a turn early. And that's where the mana diamonds can really help you out. Now let's compare the mana diamonds to some other popular 2-mana rocks, starting off with the Signet Cycle. These rocks may come in untapped, sure, but you still need to pay 1 mana into them before they can tap for mana. So as something you play on turn 2, they actually aren't that much better than the diamonds. And let's be honest, even for other 2-mana rocks that you don't need to pay mana into, such as Arcane Signet, a lot of the time you just play these out on turn 2, and then you just don't tap it for mana. It happens a lot. So are you really getting that much benefit out of these rocks coming in untapped, compared to the mana diamonds coming in tapped? I'm not so sure. The mana diamonds also have another benefit over colorless rocks too, in that they actually tap for colored mana. You might have some cards in your deck with a really high pip requirement, where too many colorless sources might pose a real issue. Or maybe you have an extremely low curve, in which case colorless sources can also be an issue. As an example, in my Lightpaws deck, which is a fairly high power deck, I'm still running Marble Diamond. This is because the average mana cost of the deck is extremely low, and because I'm also running a decent amount of cost reducers. I've run into the issue where I've tons of colorless sources on the board, but I can't use any of it because everything just costs like 1 or 2 white pips of mana. And finally, for 3 or 4 color decks, colorless sources can also be a real pain here as well. Color fixing is even more relevant for these kinds of decks, and without green to help you out, these colorless rocks will be much more of a road bump to your deck's success. So even though the mana diamonds come untapped, the fact that they can tap for colored can really help you out. I hope this video has gotten you to, at the very least, take another look at these mana rocks. Yes, they are generally weaker sources of ramp, but they aren't the unplayable trash that many people assume. They in actuality aren't that much weaker than other 2-mana rocks, and I believe that they do deserve a spot in your budget decks.